All right, so what we're going to do now that we've made our minimum, maximum, median, mean, first and third quartile, and standard deviation equations and found those numbers for our set of data, we're going to make some charts that are going to help us analyze basically what's going on in this data visually rather than just having to look at these numbers and interpret them. I think the visual aspect of a chart can really be helpful in giving us a very quick and easy way of analyzing whether we, for example, have a normal distribution or not, which is what we're going to try and figure out in this set of data, which is Ford Motor Company's return between 1975 and 2017. And actually, we probably should label our Ford Motor Company returns 1975 to 2017. So we need to have a nice title for our chart. So anyways, we're going to make the chart by going to Insert and then going down to Chart. And the chart is going to pre-populate with a bunch of data that we're going to actually need to change a little bit, but which actually helps us by giving us the set of numbers already. So for example, like if you look over here, when you click on the chart, it gives you the actual chart, but then this kind of editor over here tells us what is going to be in the chart. So for example, like the first part is like it's the type of chart it is. So it gives you a bunch of different options, but we're going to leave it in line chart for now. But you might have gotten, it might give you like, for example, whatever type of chart this one is, or a histogram or something. But honestly, any of them are fine as long as you have the right set of data. So it's going to say C3 to F46 as the data range. Yours may be a little bit different, but what you need to make sure of is that your x-axis is like the year, and then your y-axis is going to be that percent gain or loss, which actually we don't have right here. So we're going to need to change that by basically going to Edit, and instead of having D3 to D46, we want G4 to G46. So we're going to put that in instead, and then we're going to click OK. Now, because this is in percentages and the other two are in whole numbers, it looks like the blue line of the percent gain or loss is like way low compared to these other ones. But we're actually going to get rid of ending price by clicking remove and gain or loss by clicking remove. And now it's going to actually look like a real chart. Now, this kind of gives us some interesting insight into what was going on in Ford, right? You have that gigantic maximum, which you can see right here, where in 2009 they made 336%. Which I guess is like basically during the recession, Ford got a huge infusion of cash from the federal government that might have caused that huge jump. But other than that, you know, most of the other gains are kind of much closer to the mean or even the median of 14.85 or 2.97% would be somewhere like right here. So, you know, this 336% may kind of count as an outlier in Ford's growth, but it's relevant because that 330% means that the people who had invested in Ford made a lot of money if they had bought in at the beginning that time. Now, on the other hand, the Ford prior to 2009 had been losing a lot of money. I mean, if you look, for example, at 2008, for example, and 2007, they lost 10% and 66%. And even before that, 47 and 2% between 2005 and 2008. So, you know, Ford had some really bad years there. But anyways, between 2009 and 2010, they made quite a bit of money. Anyways, so this is one chart that we can use to kind of get a sense of what Ford is like. But if we want to really get a good normal distribution or see if we have a normal distribution, we're going to have to do a little bit more digging. So we're basically going to make a histogram. And if you go to the data and you go down, you can actually change the type of chart you get. You get column charts, bar charts, pie charts, scatter plots. And down in the bottom, I don't know why it's so far, we got a histogram chart, which you can see is right here. Now, this histogram chart gives you kind of a sense that it might actually be normally distributed because it feels vaguely symmetrical, except for that one big old 300% gain in 2009. But I don't really like this graph because I think that the bars are too wide, and because if you look at these, you got 27 in this and 6 in these other ones. So a lot is hidden because of the fact that this is so wide. So I figured out a way to kind of make these bars a little bit narrower, but what we're going to have to do is do another equation here. So what we're going to do is we're going to click equal, so similar to the other ones like for finding standard deviation or mean or median. And then we're going to click the dollar sign, which basically holds the column constant while the numbers get bigger. So we're going to click that dollar sign, and then we're going to click G because we're going to be multiplying all of these numbers by 100, which is going to allow us to make wider columns like we can see over here. So we're going to say, and we're going to start in G. Oh, sorry, no. We don't want an equal sign. We want to click multiply because we're going to multiply by 100. So we click multiply, and then we click dollar sign G4, which is where it starts. And then again, we're going to put the, actually, we're just going to leave it like that, and then click a comma, and then 100, which we're going to multiply by. So it multiplied 31.84% by 100, which just left us with 31.84. Now this doesn't really change anything except that it takes the percent away. And if we did that just with 1 or 2, it wouldn't matter. We could just delete the percent. But if we want to do it for the whole column, it makes it a lot easier because what you can do here is then click the little square in the lower right-hand corner of this cell and drag it down, and it just does it for everything. It does it for each one. And if you click on these, you can see it basically left that G there and then clicked 11 because it's the 11th row, and then it still multiplied it by 100. So you can do the same all the way down. You just keep highlighting it all the way down, and then boom, you get all those numbers without having to do the multiplication thing every time. It's kind of one of the powers of variables. I mean, basically the dollar sign G represents like a coefficient that you're multiplying your variable by, and the 4 here kind of represents an x. So it's basically like, column G times the number, right, or column G and then the number, and then multiply that number by 100, and then you get these numbers over here. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to change our histogram a little bit by going back to data. Instead of percent gain or loss, we're going to edit that. We're going to find this column instead, so H4 to H46. Instead of G3 to G46, we're going to go H4 to H46. Like that. Okay. We're just going to delete it because sometimes it is a little squirrely and doesn't do the right thing. H4 to H46. Okay. Well, it doesn't seem to want to do that, but I'm going to try it one more time. Okay. I'm going to edit this again. I'm going to say H4 to H46. Well, sometimes if you just add a series, it'll allow you to do it. H3, H46. Yeah, sometimes it can be a little weird like that, and then you remove this other one. Now, we've got this one, so we've got H3 to H46, but now instead of 0.25, it's 25, and what we can do is go to that Customize bar, and so we've got Data and Customize, we click Customize. You click on the histogram subcategory, and bucket size is auto, but you can change this to be narrow or wider. Right now, it's got a bucket size that's about 25. The column is 25 wide, but we can narrow that. We can make it 10. And now, this gives us a very different sense of what's going on. Frankly, this looks almost symmetrical, right? I mean, obviously, you've got a few that are kind of lower, but overall, it has a vaguely symmetrical look with the two outliers that sort of give us some kind of noise. They kind of are, telling us some weird stuff and make the mean much higher than the median. But if you don't think about those two and just think about the other part, you do definitely get a sense that it's sort of normally distributed. And I think that this really kind of helps us understand a little bit better the nature of a stock market return. I mean, obviously, the different stocks are going to look differently based on their charts, but I think that this really gives us a sense that most of the years, right, you're going to be a little bit higher than 0, right, but it's still going to have a lot of negative and a lot of positive. But there's going to just be sometimes when things go really crazy, and this is an example of that, where you've got, for example, that 330% return or 140% return, which is like if you had $1,000, you'd have ended up with $3,300 by the end of that year, or $10,000, you'd have ended up with $33,000. So, sometimes, and those matter, right? Like, I mean, if you have a lot of money invested and you have 1 year where you make a lot of money just in that year, then that's great. And that doesn't, even if it's an outlier, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. So something to think about. Anyway, this is a complete set of work now. We've got our nice graph, we've got our 5-number summary, and we've got our data and a nice title. So this would be ready to submit.